Pippen, a beautiful play.
6 NBA championships, 6-time NBA All-Star, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, Hall of Famer. Scottie, you did everything that you could do in the game. Now in his new memoir, Unguarded, Scottie Pippen is sharing intimate details about his road to superstardom.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to Bulls basketball.
Including what he really thought about the docuseries The Last Dance, which followed the Chicago Bulls dynasty in the 90s. Pippen says when he agreed to be filmed, he wasn't aware it would focus so heavily on Michael Jordan. You come out swinging in this book, and right off the top, you have a lot of criticism about The Last Dance.
I thought it was a great documentary. I felt like the documentary only told a story that sort of glorified him as a player and not glorified us as a team.
You call Michael Jordan selfish in the first chapter. Why is that?
I mean, he was a great scorer, but a lot of things that he did was based on him as an individual. And I think basketball is a team game.
Watching you and Michael on the court, it looked like two best friends out there just crushing everybody. What was your relationship like off the court?
It wasn't what you saw on the court. We always will have that respect for each other, but our friendship is not where people see it on TV think it is.
Do you think that Michael Jordan would be as successful without you?
No, but I don't think I would be successful without him. I think we both complemented each other in a lot of different ways, and we kind of competed and pushed each other to be great.
Pippen says The Last Dance was a chance for Jordan to tell his story, but his new book is a chance for Pippen to tell his. Pippen's story began with learning the game on a dirt court in Hamburg, Arkansas, a rim attached to an old light pole. You say some of the best games ever played were on the dirt court. Why is that?
I was learning. I was growing. That was the fun part of it because there was never any expectations or pressure.
The youngest of 12 children, as a kid, his older brother Ronnie was partially paralyzed by a school bully. Later, his father would suffer a stroke, leaving him disabled.
Well, it gave me a lot of responsibilities at a young age, you know, to help take care of them and to be there for my mom. And I grew up fast.
Was that a motivating factor for you to play sports?
Yeah, it was motivating. I mean, I was trying to find my way out.
After being kicked off the basketball team in high school and without a scholarship, he'd go on to play for the University of Central Arkansas.
Scott Pippen.
At 21 years old, Pippen was drafted 5th overall pick, landing him with the Chicago Bulls.
All the work that I put in really became fruitful for me that day, and I was able to finally take a deep breath.
The book also detailing a dark moment in his relationship with then Bulls head coach Phil Jackson. In 1994, there was an issue during a game where Phil Jackson wanted you to inbound the ball instead of take the last shot, and he deferred the last shot to Tony Kukoc. For years, you said Phil Jackson is a racist.
I felt like that I had earned my right to take that last shot. I felt like he disrespected me at that moment.
Looking back on it after all these years, you don't feel that way about it.
When you're a player and you're in the heat of the moment, those things go through your mind. But now that it's over, I've had a lot more great times with Phil than I did bad times. And that's why I say that.
Pippen's career in the NBA would last 17 seasons, and he'd be named one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history. He retired in 2004. A year later, the Bulls retired his jersey.
That was a special moment for me. It just, you know, shows the hard work that I had put in and, you know, the belief that I had in myself.
And it's amazing how fast it goes, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's,
like that?
Yeah, because you're always trying to prepare for the next challenge.
Before we ended, I had one final question. How do you want to be remembered?
That's the greatest of all time.
And that's a great answer.
Oh, that was something. Wow.
The greatest of all time. Love my Arkansas boy.
But he didn't know that the documentary was going to focus so much on Michael Jordan. But, you know, Pippen was great. He was a
player.
fantastic player. I mean, as you heard in the end of the piece there, all his accolades. But it's a shame, and for him to say that we knew they weren't that.
Except Michael was determined to prove to the current generation of fans that he was larger than life during his day, and still larger than LeBron James, the player many consider his equal, if not superior. So Michael presented his story, not the story of The Last Dance, as our coach Phil Jackson billed the 97-98 season once it became obvious the two Jerrys, that's owner Jerry Reisendorf and general manager Jerry Krause, were intent on breaking up the gang no matter what happened. David Kaplan joins us on the Goodyear Hotline, brought to you by Goodyear, making the plays that move you forward. Goodyear more driven. Cap, what do you think of those comments?
It's getting juicy, Cap.
Really juicy. Number one, I was just talking to Evan off the air. I mean, how much rent does Michael pay Scottie in his head? I mean, come on, man. You're one of the top 50 players, and you continue to embarrass yourself. It's crazy because I've been around Michael a significant amount away from the basketball court. This dude is the most confident human being in the history of the world. I mean, it's not close. I don't believe Michael had any interest in releasing those videos because he had to make sure that the new generation of young fans knew he was better than LeBron. Michael knows he's better than LeBron. LeBron's a great player. He may be the second best of all time. Michael is the GOAT, and it isn't close.
Well, okay, Cap. So, look, some things you say in order to sell a book, obviously I think that is one of those things because that's a huge debate that everybody gets into, but I'm not going to let that be the real narrative here. Let me ask you a real question. Being a guy that played in Chicago, I spent time around MJ and Pip as well. Do you think there's anything at all to what Pip said about how the ego of Jordan can sometimes outshine what other players on this team have done to help him win championships? Do you feel Pip at all in that capacity?
I don't, because here was Michael's perspective. And I've asked him this question, and he gives you the same answer every time. Michael truly believed if you couldn't play at his level, not in terms of talent, in terms of want to, will to win, competitiveness, and then you had to be really, really good, that he just didn't have a use for you. And he believed he knew what the level of commitment and intensity was to win in a city where we don't win a whole lot till they came along. And if you don't want to play that way, that's fine. Then get out. Don't have anything to do with us. But if you're going to be with me, you're going to play one way. And we all know who the king of the castle was.
Yeah, and you know, Cap, for me, I have a relationship with both of these guys. They brought me up in the sports world when I was a young, wild kid running around New York City. And so in the end, I just feel like Scottie is reaching a lot in these situations for a lot of different reasons. Michael's Michael. I mean, if it was built around him and that was the last dance and that's what it was going to be, then that's what it was going to be. But what type of rift has the last dance caused amongst not only Scottie Pippen, but just other teammates in general that feel a certain way about the way they might have been portrayed in the last dance?
I think a lot of guys were like, yeah, whatever. I mean, that's the way it was when they were playing, and that they told the true story. But, you know, I remember, I don't know, when did the first excerpt of the book come out? 5 months ago, 4 months ago, where Scottie made some comments about Tony Kukoc, of why Tony got to take the last shot in a particular game, and he claimed it was that Phil Jackson, it was racially motivated. And I called, Tony's a good friend of mine. I play golf with him. I called Tony. I said, have you heard what Scottie said today? No, tell me. He goes, Scottie and I are really tight. We're boys. I said, you're not going to like this. I read him the quote. He's like, what? No way he said that. Yes, it's in his book. And Tony, I offered him to come on the air. No, I'm not getting involved in this. I can't believe he's continuing to do this. Yeah, Tony was more than a little hurt by Scottie as opposed to the way he was perceived. And at times, at the beginning of the relationship, treated by Michael.
Cap, you know what's crazy about this whole thing? For all the things that Pip has just started to say and will say more, I'm sure, in his book Unguarded that will be coming out soon, I guarantee Michael Jordan doesn't even care. That's what makes MJ MJ. Whatever. I truly feel that way, don't you?
100% that Michael, if he's listening right now, he's drinking his coffee, laughing, going, I'm still the topic of conversation, and I can't stop it. It's phenomenal. I guarantee you he doesn't care. He's laughing at it.
How much of this do you think, Cap, is Jordan is so, like, the way I just sort of described Jordan, defectively competitive. And I'm with you, the GOAT, for various reasons. We don't need to get into that now, and I think it's pretty clear. But he, like, I think of his Hall of Fame speech where everyone's there to honor the man. He gets up and uses it as an opportunity to kind of obliterate all the people who are there showing him love. Because to me, it's like he's so competitive. He has to constantly, like, win at everything. And so, because it takes two. This doesn't come out of nowhere, right? Whatever Scottie's issue is, it's coming from somewhere where he feels like he needs to kind of stand up for himself in some way. Like, how much of it is the way Jordan has treated people through the years?
I don't know if it's as much that, Max, as Scottie's been that guy who was always doubted or handled things poorly and got criticized despite being an incredibly talented basketball player. He was a guy who went off to Central Arkansas and wasn't even going to be on the team, might have been the student manager. Then he starts to grow. Then he becomes a basketball player, but then everyone goes, he's not good enough to play in the NBA. And then I was scouting in the league. Jerry Krause had called me. I was between jobs and asked me if I would go to the pre-draft camp in 1987. It's at the University of Illinois at Chicago. I want you to come in there, he tells me. I want you to go see this game on this court at this time and watch number 58 and do not tell anyone who you're looking at. Okay. There's like 90 dudes there. I walk in. I watch this guy. I'm like, well, that guy's really good. He gets up the passing lane. You don't see that in a pre-draft camp. Usually every guy's trying to just score. If we get done, he meets with me. What'd you think of him? That guy's really good. He's really talented. Where do you think he's going to go? We're hoping to steal him in the 7th round because, Jay, remember that now it's a 2-round draft. It was 7, 8, 9, 10 rounds back then. Mm-hmm. And so the next day I watch him again. I write my little report up. And Jerry said, what do you think now? I said, Jerry, there's no way that guy's there in the 7th round. That guy's really good. Now, did I think he's who he is? No. The 3rd day of the camp, number 58's got like 40 guys around the court watching him. And Jerry's like, oh, God, I don't think he's going to be there when we pick. And then they made the trade to go get Scottie, and Scottie became Scottie. Then Jerry Reinsdorf, Scottie says, I want a long-term deal. I've had back problems. He gives it to him and tells him, I can't renegotiate this, so if you sign it, you got to live up to it. Yeah, Jerry, my back, I got to make sure I'm protected. And, of course, a year in, he's underpaid grossly, and they won't renegotiate the deal. He'd been warned. It was on him. Then he sits out 1.8 seconds because Tony's going to get the shot and not him. Then he couldn't play with migraines in the Eastern Conference Final Game 7. Like, all this stuff happened, and he's still one of the 50 greatest players. So I still think it's all in his head. I do.
How has the relationship deteriorated over time? I mean, two guys that win championships together, you still would think that they would celebrate to some degree, but clearly that's not the case.
We had Dennis Rodman on, and he said when he came to Chicago, he said, I walked in the Berto Center the first day. I've just been traded to the Bulls. Michael Jordan walks up to him, pulls him in the training room. He said, close the door. He looked at me. He goes, you're a great player. You screw this team chemistry up, I'll kill you. Are we clear? He said, and that was basically the last time he ever talked to Michael Jordan while he was with the Bulls, except on the court. He said, we'd go to dinner, and Dennis and his entourage at one table, Scottie at another table, Michael and his group at another table. He's like, wasn't like we hung out. And Scottie, the same thing. And Scottie had some off-the-court stuff go on here that we don't have to get into. So none of that ever happened to Michael Jordan. So Scottie's had his share of missteps to contribute to him feeling disrespected at times.
It's funny, Cap. Like, everybody's like, "Oh, their relationship." I'm like, "What relationship? You mean on the court?" Because off the court, Jordan's one of one. He had his crew. Everybody had their crew back then. It wasn't a lot of team events and things of that sort.
Well, Michael had his crew, but if it was anybody on the team, it was not really any of the guys that were starters.
Yeah.
It was Scottie Burrell or some of these other guys that just wanted to be in his company. But the other stars, Scottie, Dennis Rodman. Look, here's how tough Michael was. Will Perdue, not a great player, but a really solid contributor, and Michael refused to call him Will Perdue. He kept calling him Will Vanderbilt on the court. And Will said to him, "My name's Will Perdue." He goes, "You ain't good enough to play at Purdue." That's how Michael challenged these guys and treated these guys. Yes, that's all true.
I love it, though.
Cap, how much do you think that Pippen, like I always thought LeBron is like a puffed up Pippen. LeBron plays like LeBron is a point forward. Pippen was an early prototype of a scoring, defending point forward who could run your offense. He was an excellent passer, not a great shooter. Like in many respects, LeBron reminds me of a blown up version of Scottie Pippen. And Pippen maybe identifies when he sees LeBron, that's some version of me, and prefers that to Jordan, or kind of uses that as a proxy to like hit Jordan over the head with. Yeah, I mean, like, is there anything there?
They're similar styles. I mean, yeah, that's like a Cadillac and a Chevrolet. I mean, LeBron's just ridiculously good, but Michael didn't have all the training and he lifted weights, he worked out. It's not like it is today with what LeBron has put together, but I think Scottie just felt disrespected all the time.
What did you make of what Scottie said about Michael releasing The Last Dance because of the shadow of LeBron James?
I don't believe that. I really don't. I think Michael had this. People have wanted to see it. We're in a pandemic, and it was time. They rushed it out to get it faster because we're all on lockdown. I think it all came together, but Michael been sitting on these things for a long time. You're telling me that if he truly wanted to get acclaim and make sure that everyone knows who the GOAT is, why did he wait so long to release it then?